Does Final Fight 2 on the Super Nintendo still worth playing today? When I boot up Final Fight 2 on the Super Nintendo today, something familiar always hits me before the Capcom logo even fades in. It's that quiet hum of anticipation, the same feeling I had as a kid sitting way too close to the TV, gripping a controller that felt just a little too big for my hands. Back then, I didn't have words for why the game felt so engaging. I only knew that the moment those first enemies walked onto the screen, I was ready to clear the streets all over again. But now, decades later, replaying Final Fight 2 gives me a whole different perspective. I'm not just remembering childhood nostalgia, I'm actually looking at it through the lens of everything gaming has become since then. And the big question I want to explore is this: does Final Fight 2 still hold up in today's gaming world? Is it still worth playing in 2025? To answer that, I want to break down what the game does well, where it shows its age, and why it still has a surprisingly strong charm that modern gamers might overlook. When I start a fresh playthrough today, the first thing I notice is how smooth the controls still feel. Final Fight 2 doesn't waste time with tutorials or menus. It drops you right into the action, and within seconds you remember everything the game expects from you. Move, punch, jump, grab, throw. That's it. And somehow that simplicity becomes part of the appeal. The controls are tight, responsive, and predictable in a good way. There's never a moment when you feel the game didn't do what you intended. One thing I appreciate more as an adult is the pacing. Every stage moves with a steady rhythm. Walk forward, a couple enemies enter the screen, you deal with them, you move on. It's formulaic, yes, but the rhythm lets you enter this almost meditative flow, where the game becomes less about complexity and more about precision. There's something refreshing about how straightforward it is, especially when we're used to games filled with skill trees, combo lists, and branching menus. Graphically, Final Fight 2 has aged remarkably well. When I replay it nowadays, I'm struck by how much personality is packed into every sprite. Characters have these exaggerated animations, the way they fall, the way they lunge at you, the way they flinch when you land a hit. There's an energy to everything that screams arcade lineage. Capcom was at the top of their 16-bit game here, and it shows in the details, the bright stages, the uniquely themed enemies, the backgrounds full of movement and life. It's a reminder of how expressive pixel art can be when it's designed with intention. And then there's the soundtrack. The music in Final Fight 2 doesn't always get mentioned in retro conversations, but it's incredibly fitting. It leans into that classic Capcom vibe, catchy enough to keep you engaged, but rhythmic enough to support the pacing of each fight. When I listen to it today, it's like audio nostalgia therapy. There's something grounding about hearing those old SNES sound chips come alive. But even with all of that, the real heart of Final Fight 2, for me at least, lies in the co-op mode. I remember sitting next to friends or cousins, each of us choosing our favorite character, Hager with his iconic pile driver, Maki with her speed, Carlos with his sword-leaning slashes. As kids, we weren't thinking about frame data or hitboxes. We were just trying to spam our way out of being surrounded by enemies. And when someone got grabbed, panic, pure panic. We'd yell at each other like the world was ending, even though it was just a sprite getting punched off screen. Playing co-op today brings back that same sense of camaraderie. There's a unique joy in tackling a beat-em-up together, reviving each other, clearing waves of enemies, and laughing when someone gets flattened by a flying kick they didn't see coming. Modern co-op games deliver big cinematic moments, but there's something intimate about sharing a single screen, fighting shoulder to shoulder, with no split screen, no online lag, no distractions, just two players and a crowd of enemies. It feels pure. Now, stepping back and looking at it from a modern perspective, Final Fight 2 definitely shows its age in some areas. The enemy variety is limited. A lot of the guys you fight are palette swaps of earlier enemies with slightly different stats. The combo system is pretty basic compared to what later beat-em-ups would introduce, and the game doesn't take many risks with level design. Most stages follow a familiar pattern. But here's where things get interesting. Even with those limitations, Final Fight 2 still feels solid, consistent, and surprisingly addictive. The gameplay loop holds up because it's built on fundamentals that never went out of style. Move, engage, control spacing, manage crowds, break throws, conserve health. These are core beat-em-up principles used in modern titles. What Final Fight 2 lacks in depth, it makes up for in clarity. Another thing that stands out from a modern viewpoint is how different the difficulty curve feels today. As a kid, the game felt hard, very hard. Enemies could stun lock you if you weren't careful, bosses hit like trucks, and health items always seemed just out of reach. But now, and after years of playing fast, complex games, Final Fight 2 feels more manageable. You start to see patterns more clearly. You recognize openings. Your reflexes are sharper. It's like revisiting a challenge you once thought was impossible and realizing you've grown. In a strange way, that experience makes Final Fight 2 more rewarding now than it ever was. It's a reminder of how much we evolve as players. When I look at the modern beat-em-up genre, games like Streets of Rage 4, River City Girls, and Fight and Rage have raised the bar with deep combo systems, branching movesets, unlockable abilities, and stylish animations. Final Fight 2 can't compete on that level. It's not trying to. Instead, it offers a stripped-down version of the genre, a way to appreciate where these modern games came from. And honestly, sometimes that simplicity is exactly what you want. No complicated button inputs, no grinding for upgrades, no endless menus. Just you, the enemies, and the stage. When life gets busy and you want something easy to jump into, Final Fight 2 delivers a kind of low-commitment fun that's increasingly rare. One thing I've noticed as I get older is that retro games don't just entertain, they connect me to different parts of my life. When I replay Final Fight 2, I remember who I was when I first played it. I remember the room, the atmosphere, the snacks nearby, the people who were with me. The game becomes a time machine, and the experience feels familiar but new at the same time. That's something modern games can replicate in their own way, but the emotional connection to retro titles hits differently. So after replaying it now, with both nostalgia and modern expectations in mind, here's my honest conclusion. Yes, Final Fight 2 on the SNES is absolutely still worth playing today. Not because it's the most advanced beat-em-up, not because it competes with modern titles, and not because it reinvented the genre. It's worth playing because it delivers solid, no-nonsense gameplay wrapped in charming 16-bit style. It's approachable, it's fun in short bursts, and it's even better with a friend. And for anyone who grew up with the SNES, or anyone curious about classic Capcom design, it's a window into a special moment in gaming history. If you're a retro fan, it's almost essential. If you're new to old-school beat-em-ups, it's a great starting point. And if you're someone who just wants to revisit a warm piece of your childhood, Final Fight 2 still hits the way it used to. Thanks for sticking with me through this look back. If you enjoyed this deep dive into a classic, make sure to like, subscribe, and tell me which retro game you want me to explore next.